we jump back into Likutei Moharan. We're holding at the very, very end of Torah Gimmul, and we're going to begin today Torah Dalet. And we finish off. We're not going to do Chazar now on the whole Torah Gimmul. It's fairly lengthy, and we've been learning it for a few days now. But we finished off with the Rabbi Bar Chana interpretation, and we were basically learning about the capacity of the tzaddik, like the wave, to rise all the way up to Shemayim and to bring down new Torah. And at the very end, we were learning this very beautiful interaction between the waves, which we now understand as the Jews, the Yidden, who are being elevated by the tzaddik, those neshamas, where one wave says to the next, if you're having such an exalted experience, obviously you must be such a big tzaddik. And maybe there's one thing that you still need to fix, and I'll help you, which is the consciousness of those who are part of the fellowship of the tzaddik, or part of Anshe Shlomeinu, people who are connected to the tzaddik. So they're trying to help each other, and they're trying to be there for each other, and that itself is very beautiful, right? Shema Shavakta Ezamidu Ba'adam Hazeh, right? Shadayin Moshe Alecha, I'll help you to fix it. And the answer is, no, don't be silly. He says, come and see the strength of the tzaddik. That I haven't even done anything. I haven't even succeeded in pulling myself out of anything. And yet connection to the tzaddik enables a person to have a very exalted perspective. Indeed. If you don't mind closing the door, thank you so much. So, this is reflective of a teaching that Rabbi Nachman has much later on in Likutei Moharan, which we'll see together, but Ezras Hashem one day, preferably in Yerushalayim, all of us, where the Rebbe says over there that those who are connected to a tzaddik might be even higher because of their connection to the tzaddik ha'emes than other tzaddikim, in a certain sense. And this is a little bit of a glimmer of that teaching that we already find toward the beginning of Likutei Moharan, where he says, no, let's just read it inside because it was so beautiful. We ended with this yesterday. Just the second to last paragraph on the column. Come and see the greatness of the master, that in this context, which is referring to the tzaddik. Come and see how great his strength is. Not even one strand's width am I able to breach the barrier of the sand. The bracha I was thinking about yesterday, by the way, was Roika Aretz Alamayim. For some reason I couldn't pull it up. Roika Aretz Alamayim. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu puts Eretz there, and the water cannot transgress. Gvul Samta Bal Yavorin, also a pasuk perish. Ad she'ela soisi Shem Shavakti Mida Ba'adam Shadayin Litikanti Yasa. You're asking me, maybe there's some kind of midah that I haven't fixed yet. Heida Chaverti, listen. Shadayin in Mishuka B'chala Taivas. I'm still stuck. I'm still dealing with all the Taivas in the world. Vadayin Lo Yitzasim in Achala L'Kadosh Afilu Kum Lechut. I haven't even gotten myself out of anything. Right, so how am I supposed to experience this aliyah, this yerida, and this arisi moiri and besami, right, to understand the besamim that's shining behind the mara nefesh, the mara la, in the bechina mahalich nefesh, the go, right, that bechina lista avar, and each yefshur li love the bechinas ibor anal. I can't come into ibor, avar, ibor, like we learned. We afal pikein, but put chazik gvur to the marach. Come and see Anukoyach HaChacham. Shakol Kach Koyach HaChazak, that his strength is so incredibly deep and powerful. Shafi the Nefesh Shali Hela Ibor. Listen to how humble these words are. And that, by the way, is part and parcel of the tzaddik's job that he's doing with this person, is that it enables a person to embrace what they are with total authenticity. We speak a lot about matzah consciousness, right? Just the humility of just saying the thing as it is, right? Even my humble soul, even my pagum, my soul, was able to be elevated by the tzaddik. And I think if we would go around the room, some of us feel this way. What a privilege to be learning these teachings. I know for myself, I am this wave here talking, who would have thunk, that mamash be bar tachtiyos, I would be sitting here and teaching and learning and writing, and it's all the pug chazi gvurta de marach, that it makes no sense that somebody like me and my journey and my story that I would end up here and have the privilege of tasting from the Torah Datika Stima and playing some kind of tiny role in helping other people do the same. It's a pella. Pug chazi gvurta de marach. Afilu nefesh shali hela bi'ibur. Okay, so we continue with that Perish Ashriya. Fortunate is the nations of Bechinas Hashgacha. This is the aspect of Hashgacha. Ashriya because Ashrei is a form of the word sure, right? Ashurenu, Migvais Ashurenu, the Bechina, like we learned, of the Pnei Shar Shebemerkava, to be able to see and recognize our greatness. Ashrei Ha'am Zebechinas Hashgacha Yoidei Surua Zebechinas Yaakov. This is the aspect of Yaakov Avinu as a Bechina of Das, right? Yaakov Avinu is connected to Sukkot, so we have Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot is in a certain sense Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And how do we know that Sukkot is connected to Yaakov Avinu? Because the pasuk says, I'm thinking of two psukim. The pasuk says that Yaakov Avinu built Sukkos, right? Yaakov Nasa Sukkaisa, right? Chazal tells us that he built Sukkos for his mikneh, for his cattle. And then the pasuk also tells us leman yedu darei seichem kibus sukkos hashavti bnei Yisrael, right? And yedu is the bechina of das, right? That's the bechina of Yaakov Avinu. So yoidei serua is the bechinas Yaakov, shu bechinas tzedakah, which is the aspect of the kindness that's necessary in order to draw down hashgacha shlema, like we learned. Kamei shekasuv mishpat utzdaka b'Yaakov atasisa. The bechina of Yaakov Avinu is connected to chesed and tzedakah, and it's all wrapped up with Yaakov, because this is every Torah that we're learning, basically, in one way or another, is referencing Yaakov Avinu from the standpoint of this consciousness of Yaakov Avinu that we're trying to build, which in this document, for those who saw it, right? So we updated it yesterday. We now have all 13 teachings, including this one, even though we didn't finish it yet, but I added it in. Very, very kedai, like especially over Pesach, we're going to have a break of this year for quite a while. If you have it, oh, beautiful. So if you have, I don't know what that is up to though, that's the old one. So if you can try to print out just the extra pages and add them on, and there were some changes that were made also, so kedai, it's not the end of the world, print it out. And you have it for Pesach. You can review everything that we learned in the past 2+ months now. And that's something very special indeed. So if you read through, just the last 2 pages, which is where the whole thing is at, right? Where you get to the cumulative flow over here, this is the whole thing. This is everything that we learned. And again and again and again, you'll see the recurring theme is Yaakov Avinu consciousness, just keeping on coming back to the very first Torah, which we said is in a certain sense the premise of 2 lifestyles of Yaakov and Esav, right? And then the Rebbe is developing Galus and Geula, and all the other associated elements that a person needs to be connected to if they want to be living in alignment with this time, which is so crucially important, that we should be living in this consciousness and drawing down this mindset and these messages to the world. So that's the bechina of Yaakov Avinu, the bechina of Chesed and Tzedakah that are associated here in the pasuk in Tehillim and Parak Sadi Tes with Yaakov Avinu. So this is Ashriya Yoidei Surua. Ashrei is the hashgacha that's created as a result of Yoidei Surua. There's the bechina of Yaakov Avinu of Das. Hashem zebechinas havayis bechinas chasadim, also chesed yud kei vav kei as opposed to gvura, which we know is Elikim, right? Elikim is gvura and yud kei vav kei is chesed. Ba'ar panecha yahalechun. Ba'ar panecha zebechinas haseichel. This is the aspect of the seichel. This is the seichel that the tzaddik has to have. And you remember there are 2 sichliyim. There's a shinshel shalish rashim and shinshel arba rashim. That both of these is the aspect of the seichel that the tzaddik needs in order to A, collect all the souls together, big avodah, and 2 is it being able to elevate them and to draw down the chachma. Yahalechon is Elu Anafashes, and the word Yahalechon is a reference to the elevation of the souls, which we learned are the bechina of Mahalach Nefesh, right? The bechina of going, Yahalechon. And that's really the end of Torah Yud Gimmul. Here's an interesting thing. Reb Nassan writes, he says it was also going through the the writings, the fragmentary writings of Rabbi Nachman, Sheshayach Latar Hanal, and I found something relevant to this teaching. But I only found the edge of the paper. Over there was just written down the end of the Inyan, and we lost the beginning of his interpretation of the pasuk, as we're going to see in a minute. When he carries on and he says Torah, Torah, which is the aspect of eyesight, Ashkacha, Tanta, Kiniskala El, right? Ta'amim, Nekudas, Tagin, and Oisios, like we learned, which are the Bechina of Abram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and David, which are the Bechina of the Tlas, Gvana De'ena, the three colors of the eye, and the Bas Ag, and the pupil in the middle, like we learned, right? So it's all eye-oriented. Kol Basar Yachtav. Every eye will see Kol Basar Yachtav, all flesh. Zebachinas Lakita Sarafashas Kulum. This is the collectivity of all the souls. Bechinas Lakach Nafashas Chacham. Because it says Rero Kol Basar Yachtav. So Re'iyah is the Bechina of Ashkacha. Kol Basar Yachtav, says the Rebbe over here. And again, it's a unique element that we didn't learn in the lesson. Nowhere in the lesson did he apply it to this pasuk. So it's beautiful to have, right? That Kol Basar Yachtav, the collection of all the souls. Ki pi Hashem diber. We'll all see that the mouth of Hashem is speaking. Kol zenas al yidei ruach nediva. They will see that it is all a result of the capacity to put out and to quash and to extinguish really the flames of the Tavis Mammon, with the realization that although on the surface it looks like Maras Nefesh, but the truth is that it's all B'Samim. And that you can channel that sense of lack, which is leading a person to want to fill it with material gain, right? Something similar to Torah Ches, where we learned about the different ruchos, right? And so they think that they're going to fill it with the ruach of Yeshli Rav, which is the bechin of Esav, ruach Sa'ara, or it's Takif Lefisha, but it doesn't really fill the need, right? And paradoxically, what we're actually looking for is not to get, but to give. This is what we're really looking for. Meaning we want to be benevolent. We want to live a life of meaning. We're looking for meaning. We're not really looking for physical, material acquisitions or any acquisitions of any kind, honor or whatever. That person is looking to be a person that's in this world living a mission filled with fulfillment and meaning. And so when a person can extinguish the flames of the Tavis Mammon with the Ruach Nediva, this is the Bechina of the Ruach Peh, of the Pi Hashem Dibar. Kama Shamar Chazal, Bepicha Zu Tzedakah. Picha is connected to tzedakah. Ad kan l'shoin hazal u'muvan adav shemevi amikra v'nigla k'fayt Hashem. Right, he was bringing the pasuk v'nigla k'fayt Hashem v'rol kabasei yaktiv kipi Hashem diber. Right, and he's commenting on this pasuk. That's what he's doing. But u'mavar kol ad maimer anal. Right, and it's revealed within this pasuk all the aspects of the maimer. Shemafurish b'pasuk zeh ach b'amnesein harabim chaseh pirish reisha dekra. But we lost, because it was only the fragment of the paper. We lost the first two words, which are or the first three words, v'nikla k'fayt Hashem. So that we don't have, and it just begins with v'ra'u kol basar yachtav, and he was darshaning on those words. V'ra'u is the b'chin of ashkacha, kol basar yachtav is the collection of the souls, ki pi Hashem diber is the b'chin of ruach, and it's up to us to think and get into the Rebbe's mind, what might he have said on the words v'nikla k'fayt Hashem, and how that would fit in, and that's for each of us to do b'siyata d'shmaya. Ad kan, Torah Gimmul, Hadra Chalan, Torah Gimmul, Hadran Allah. Okay. Here we begin Torah Dalet. B'siyata d'shmaya b'shem Hashem Nasav Natzliach. It's quite lengthy. My hope, I can't promise, my hope is that we should finish this before I leave for Pesach. So that's the next couple of days. We have today is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Monday and Tuesday. So the hope is in 5 days we should be able to get through it. And then we'll break there, and then we'll carry on Be'ezras Hashem after Pesach with much sunnier mornings. Siyata d'shmaya. Okay, so let's begin. Blow on the Chaydesh, Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, a shofar b'kesa liyom chagenu. It's a reference, of course, to Rosh Hashanah, which is on the first of the month when the moon is hidden, as Chazal darshan. It says, the Eilig Tzadik Schus Yagun Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael Amen. Lahamshich Shalim Ba'olam. Doesn't that sound nice? Right? Quite a necessary thing for today. To draw down peace into the world. Tzarech lahalis kvar HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'sharshay. There's only one way, and that's to elevate the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to its shayrish. And the shayrish hainu is liyira. Shayrish is liyira, to awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence. Yira ki yadua, already we know from Kadmainin, has the same letters as Re'iyah, right? Which means that a person's eyesight is elevated, and it's the bechina of the pasuk that says Su'u marei me'enechem uru'u mi bara eila, right? That's what yira is that a person should be in constant contact with the singular source, the me, that's peeking out behind all the fragmentary, masks of the eila, of the many, right? And to see ru'u mi bara eila, who created these? And of course, like the Zohar Kadosh tells us at the beginning of Akdamat Parshas Bereishis, that if you put together the letters mi and the letter eila, you have the name Elokim. Right, so mi bara Eila, that if you take the mi and you bring it down into the Eila, and you say that although I live in a realm that's a realm of the many, right, and a realm of multiplicity, but really I believe that there's a singular source, and I'm able to find that singular source, the me, within the Eila. This is Elikim Gematria HaTeva, and it's up to us to choose, right? Do we live in a world where our eyes are not su'umarim, they're not eyes that are elevated looking up, but they're eyes that are looking down. I don't mean like down, but I mean looking down to the lower levels of the Seder Shtalshus, where all we see is Teva. So then that's one kind of life. The other kind of life is a person is looking up, is a person who's su'umarim enechem, and that's yira, right? That's what it means to live in yira shamayim, to live ki'ilu, right? We could see HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence, and this is something akin to what the Ramah writes right in the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, right? Commenting on Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Samid, where the Ramah writes over there that a person who lives with yira shamayim lives within like the palace of the king. They realize HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is here. He could pop in the door at any minute, and not in like a fearful way per se, even though I understand that the Ramah uses the word pachad over there, and we have to understand that in context, right? But it all has to be in the context of a loving relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like Rav Kluger writes, that comes first, even though the pasuk says Yirashis Chacham is Yiras Hashem. Says Rav Kluger, and we learned this in the Yichad Espoda, this series, which is highly recommended. It doesn't have to be my shir on it, but just to get the sefer if you can, whether in English or in Hebrew, super, super crucial, that sefer, Yichad Espodidus, which I have SHIURIM on. And so Rav Kluger says over there that although it's true that Reishis Chacham Yiras Hashem, that's only obviously after a healthy, shira SHIURIM relationship. After that, so then for sure, the beginning, like that's the baseline. That like we didn't even need to say. That's pasha, right? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Once you have that, then you can talk about pachad and yira, but it's not a pachad or a yira of God. Like I'm afraid God's going to hit me. Chas v'shalom. That's ridiculous. That's not a healthy relationship with any authority figure. Not a teacher, and certainly not a parent, which is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu ultimately is. B'ni b'chari Yisrael. Chas v'shalom. So what is it? You could say it's a pachad of breaking the relationship. It's a pachad of doing something that is going to get in the way of my soul in its love affair with its source, and to breach that romance. All right, and so that's pachad. But ultimately, the yira is the realization HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the room. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here. He's going to pop his head at any minute. He is already made tzitz menach harakim. To live like that, where you see the me and the eila, das is yira. Right, that's called yira shamayim. Kamashikasav liyira es Hashem hanichba. The Rebbe sees an explicit pasuk in Devarim, which is connecting yira to kavod. And so if we want to elevate the kavod, which is always malchus, all the teachings Rabbi Nachman is teaching also is all about malchus to kedusha. Right? It's all messianic. It means that there's going to come a time where the bechina of David HaMelech is going to be rectified. This is David HaMelech Mashiach, which means that the whole malchus will be mashuach. Right? It will all be anointed. We'll recognize that this world, the whole world is dripping with the anointing oil of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's choosing and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's celebrating this reality that we live within, right? So he says that aspect of kavod, in order to elevate it, you have to bring it to its shirish, which is yira. Liyira es Hashem hanichbad. You have to bring the shem hanichbad, the kavod, up to yira. And shem is always connected also to malchus, as we say, Baruch, shem, kavod, malchusai, right? Shem is connected to malchus all the time. And the pasuk says, "Vayaz David Shem." David HaMelech is connected to Shem, and there's a deeper philosophical connection between Malchus and Shem, which I'm not going to go into now. But this is the connection, okay? Liyira. So Shem is also, even though the Rebbe didn't mention Shem, the word Shem is also included in this context. Es Hashem Anichbad. Where are you going to bring it? Got to bring it Liyira. Okay, Yira is the source. So this is a kavod alal yidei taras chesed. The only way to elevate kavod to its shirish is through taras chesed. Taras chesed is what brings kavod up to yira. What's Torah's chesed? Say Chazal, the Gemara in Sukkot Mem Tes Amud Beis, v'Torah's chesed Amar Chachamim is kind of the Racha. What does it mean? Torah's chesed. Usually we think of Torah as one thing and chesed as another thing. What's the Torah of kindness? This is a person who learns Torah in order to give it over. Unbelievable. This is called Torah's chesed because a person is doing chesed with their Torah. A person learns in order to teach. A person prepares a shiur. This is Torah's chesed. You're learning Torah in order to share it. And this is the primary kavod of a Kadosh Baruch Hu that's resultant of a person who's engaged in Torah's chesed. What is a Kadosh Baruch Hu's ikar kavod? So we already learned in Torah Yud, right? If you remember, what's the primary revelation of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's greatness in the world? When even, remember? I do Chazara over Pesach. When even the Goyim, right? Remember when even the Akum, we learned it from Yisrael, right? We said, Eimasai Gadol Hashem Kishemuhula Ma'id, right? When even the Ma'id, which is the Mesitra, the Maisa, are Mohulal, are praising on Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? And that's the Eimasai, that's the Gadol Hashem Muhula Ma'id. That's the Iker Kfayt, Kamuva Bezayar. And here he brings that very same Zayar, B'shata the Shar Akum Asiv Ha'idon L'Kutshabrichu. And here he expands it, right, to Shar Akum, which is a very beautiful passage. I actually posted on my status last night because I was preparing to do Torah's Chesed. I was learning in order to prepare the shiur last night, right? So it's a very beautiful passage. We're not going to do the whole thing, but he says that when the Akum, when the Umas HaOlam are going to come and praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kedei Nistalek Vis Yakish Madakutcherichu Ele V'Sata, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's elevated name and the lower name is being elevated, Kamagabi Yisrael, like it says by Yisrael, that B'Shata da Ami Yisrael Ati Yadat Gil Hashem Yikol Alehim, Kedei Nistalek Vis Yakish Madakutcherichu. In that moment, there was an incredible proliferation of the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's greatness. And we explained that because the lesser the light, the lower down, the higher up only it's able to reach. But the greater the light, which was the whole theme of Torah Yud, if you remember, that was the whole thematic element and the motif, if you will, right, that went through the whole entire Torah from the beginning of the end of Torah Yud. The greater and deeper the light, the lower down it's able to reach. So when the light is able to reach even the lower bechinas, those who are most naturally distant from Torah, those who are most naturally distant from Emunah and from Yira, Gewalt, right? So that's the revelation, the greatest aura of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? And that's the greatest light there is. Nimsa, it emerges that Zehu Kvaidai. This is the ultimate revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod. Kishemenei Adam shehi michutz lekedusha mekarvin as atzman lifnim me'akedusha. When those who are outside of kedusha, in one way or another, as the Rebbe is going to say in a minute, right? We'll say it now. Hein geirim shemegairim hein bali tshuva. Whether it's geirim or whether it's those who grew up without a Torah background, right? And it's not natural that they should necessarily be looking for meaning, getting in touch with their neshamas, recognizing that there's more to life, and bringing themselves to connect to their tradition. Unbelievable, right? So there's no greater gilui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod than that. There's none. Because they're also, in a certain sense, bachutz, right? They're naturally outside. When we're able to bring even people like this back close to the Torah, this is the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And facetiously, as we know, a little bit facetious, but also honest, right? We know that, in today's world, what's a Baal Tshuva? What's a from Yid? I don't. Sometimes maybe it's the bigger kavod to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when we bring an already from Yid close to Torah. Maybe that's a bigger chiddush than a person, because he was at least on some level religious. So it's even more distant in a sense because he thinks he's already there. So it's in a sense harder, than sitting to somebody who knows that they don't know anything. You sit and talk to them about Yiddishkeit and it blows their mind. But to be able to even bring from Yidden back, that's maybe the greatest revelation of the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But this is why this is happening now. In the 80s, in the 90s, in the early thousands, then it was all downhill from there, from a Kiruv perspective. And not because Kiruv is impossible, but because we need to upgrade our methodology. But that's for a different shmooze. But this is what's happening now. Right, the whole inyan is Bali Tshuva, and the whole inyan is trying to reach people who are distant and to find a way to bring them close. This is the tikkun of the end of days. This is the tikkun, and zeu kvaydai. This is the tikkun of Malchus. And again, from this perspective, it's not a b'di'evet. We have to understand this deeply. This is connected to the hasaga of ratzai and shoiv, right? To understand that there is no b'di'evet, right? From this standpoint, it is orchestrated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu that there should be A, goyim, right? That for sure. And B, there should even be Jews who are more distant. Because who's to say what HaKadosh Baruch Hu needed them for? Without going into this whole thing now, I mentioned it in my book, The Story of Our Lives, chapter 16 and 17, without getting into this huge sugya. This is the difference between Rachel and Leah. This is the difference between Yosef and Yehuda. Right? There are certain people that are supposed to be Yosef HaTzadik Jews, right? That their whole Indian is they toe the line. They're not breaching what the expressed will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the Torah and halacha, and then there are David HaMelech Jews, and our whole generation is the David HaMelech generation because we're the final dar. This is Dar Basra. This is it. And this the whole energy is Malchus, and David HaMelech is a tzaddik who at least on some level, right? Even though the Gemara says, whoever said that David HaMelech sinned, etc. But at least he felt like, he did something that wasn't exactly proper, and the Navi comes and, yells at him for it, and the whole sefer Tehillim is David HaMelech's crying over it, right? So using his own words, there are Jews who this is their whole thing. This is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu put them in the world. It's an orchestrated journey. Because the Iker Gedula of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is actually going to emerge from their lives in a way that it not necessarily will emerge from the life of the great tzaddik. And if and only if they don't give up on themselves, and in a moment of shoiv, they recognize that I can still fix. I can still fix. And when they fix, right, not that they should stay there, Chas v'shalom. David HaMelech is not a David HaMelech tzaddik because he sinned and stayed there, right? He's David HaMelech because of the tshuva. And because of the yearning, and the ka'ayel nafshi alafike mayim ke nafshi sargelecha, and the bechin of tzamalecha nafshi kamalecha basari, and nafshi ka'eretz ayefelecha sela v'chule v'chayin, a rabbi scattered throughout the whole tale. And David HaMelech is a person who's longing, who's yearning as a result of having deviated. And ultimately, according to this, the Iker Kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is expressed not by the great Gedolei Hadar, but daika by those who are finding within themselves the strength to bring themselves closer. That's the Iker Zehu Kvaidai. So says the Rebbe, V'achshav HaKavod B'galas. Right now, the Inyan of Kavod, the Inyan of presence, the Inyan of the locus, not locust, without a T at the end, the locus, the central point around which everything else revolves is buried within the Umas HaOlam. This is something again similar to Torah Aleph, which you began with, right? That now the kavod is by them. The chain, the Rebbe used the word chain over there, is by them. Over here it's the kavod chain v'chashivas. Over here it's kavod. And Am Yisrael are shvalim v'nivzim, and you see that more today than ever. Am Yisrael are shvalim v'nivzim. It's like, I don't know if you feel this way, and maybe I shouldn't be low and despised. Maybe it's not such a good thought, but I have to double think, Family wants to go out on Sunday, they want to take a trip. I have to think, where to, Where am I going to walk? What do I need harassment for? That's a real cheshbon. That's in my brain. And that's a crazy thing. But that's what it is. That I, Bishvil Yisrael Shenikru Reishis, Atim Krim Adam, that I should have to think for myself, what's going to be the reaction to those in this particular setting to an Orthodox Jew walking with, because I don't hide it. This is who I am. But I have to make a cheshbon. That's crazy. This is my world. Don't make a mistake. This is our world. And that we should be shvalim and nivzim, and that the Umas HaOlam should be totally comfortable with all their shtuyot and dimyonot. And I love them to pieces, but nebuch, the way that they live. It's a nebuch. It's on us to fix, because we should love them. Right? Bein shu ben bris, bein she'ena ben bris. Right, that we should be guarded in such a way. We should be guarded misinas habrias. We should be full of ava for the brias, like it says in Tana Devilio. But think about it. Think about it. And they should be calm and shali v'sheket ranan, and we should be shvalim and nivzim. What a ilam hafuch re'isi. What a blind world. But and I hope that it's coming soon, and I hope that our learning together and these teachings and spreading them, most importantly, is going to bring the Gula closer. She is Galak when HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod is going to be revealed from within the darkness. As the pasuk says, by the way, which he just finished. So it's so fascinating that the previous teaching doesn't allude to these two words, right? Which was the beginning of that pasuk that the Rebbe began darshaning. Ra'u kol basar yativ Hashem diber, and the beginning of the pasuk was v'niklik kvad Hashem, and the very next teaching begins with with those words, v'niklik kvad Hashem, right? And so over here we're getting that interpretation. We have to find a way to link it to the end of the previous Torah, because obviously it's connected. It's in the very same column. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod is going to be revealed. As it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod will be revealed. Then the whole world is going to get together. All the nations of the world will wake up and they're going to see the truth, and they're going to see the undistorted, uncorrupted chen of Klal Yisrael that's so hidden. They're blind, they're unable, they're incapable of seeing it. There's such a chen that we have. And kavod is nikra ar. This is a reference to the kavod. They're going to say, "Let us go." But ar Hashem. What's the ar Hashem? Is the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That the whole earth is illuminated with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod, and that's going to happen one day. And it's up to us to bring that day closer. And that's why I said the Rebbe speaks about this topic more clearly and explicitly than almost any other tzaddik maybe in history, certainly of his generation, to the exclusion of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Right? I spoke about this all the time. Right? That we need to reach the Umas Ha'olam. And the Rebbe over here speaks in a way that's even more radical, because he speaks about Gerim. Usually the Lubavitcher Rebbe was speaking about the Noahide laws. Over here, speaking about Gerim. You could say that the Rebbe means Geri Toshav, right? Because that's also Bechlal Gerim, right? And that's the Gerim who have accepted upon themselves in front of three, based in of three, to become a Noahide, and their mamish chasidu u'mis ha'olam v'chuli v'chein. That's a whole sugya. But he explicitly is going to say, and he's going to make a drasha out of Geri Tzedek, right? So he's clearly speaking mamish about Gerim, which is really not our mahalach, obviously, but it's a byproduct, as we're going to see. It's a byproduct of what? Of Torah, of Torah's chesed, of a Torah that impacts others. That it should be lilmad almanas lilamid. Says the Rebbe Vayter v'yefshal the karvas hagerim and balei tshuva elal yidei Torah. The only way to do this, which is the elevation of the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is to bring it up to yira, the only way to do that is through Torah. Kamei shekasa, as the pasuk in Mishlei says, yafutzu maya nasecha chutza. That your well springs, your streams should spread outward, right? And of course, this pasuk was made very famous by the Baal Shem HaKadosh in a letter that he wrote to his brother-in-law, Rav Gershon of Kitov, where the tzaddik explained on the last Rosh Hashanah of his life that he had had a vision of an aliyas neshama to the Kehal of Mashiach, very famous, and he asked Mashiach, "When are you coming?" And Mashiach answered, "Likashiyafutzu Maya Nasecha Chutza," using this pasuk in Mishlei, right? When your mayanos spread, where? Chutza. Shetzarach lahashkas oitzam shehem mibachutz. The capacity of Chasidus is not just to inspire. It's a nice addendum. It's a nice add-on, to people who are already serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a nice little extra flavor. No, the ikr is, and that's what we had begun learning with, if you remember, right? In Beis Gavriel, right, when we were learning pre-Chanukah about the Bechina of Hillel as opposed to Shammai, that Adrabah, we need to take the deepest secrets of the Torah. Where do we need to bring them? Daika, likashes efutza manasecha chutza. Shetzarach lahashkas oisam sheimi bachutz. We have to try to reach those who are outside, la'idiyah lehem aderech yelchuva, to teach them the proper path. Kavod is Torah, because the way to be able to get ourselves to a reality of V'nikla Kavod Hashem, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod is going to be revealed, is Ein Kavod Ela Torah. It's only through Likashiyafutzu Ma'anasecha Chutza. The Mayanas of Torah need to be able to reach those people. V'zeu, and that's pshat in the pasuk in Toitzi Yaakov Mizaylo, if you will extract preciousness from the cheap. What does that mean? The Gemara Baba Metzia says, this is a reference to people who are involved in Kiruv, whether it's Kiruv Krivim or it's Kiruv Rechaikim, and who in heaven's name knows what's the definition of Krivim and Rechaikim today. So maybe it's flipped. Who knows? Maybe those people are more Karv than I am. In many senses they are. I always say that there's an exchange program going on. We give those people who are coming to learn more about Yiddishkeit, we give them the framework, the structure, and they give us the heart and soul, right? Because they have the passion, they have the idealism. Am I willing to make sacrifices for Yiddishkeit like these people make? And I'm the Karv and they're the Rachak. Maybe they're the Karv, I'm on the Rachak. Who knows, right? Who knows? And maybe nobody's Karav and Rachak. Maybe everybody's Shalom, Amar Hashem Lekarav Rachak. Right? Like it's all equal in the eyes of Hashem because Yosef, Tzaddik, and David HaMelech each are equally close and each have their own inyan. And maybe lahepech, like the Gemara says, b'makom shabalik shuba eindim ein sadikim gemur mechalim lamed. What do we know anything? We don't know anything. We developed this. I'm a Karev professional. I was Makar of this person. I was Makar of this. We weren't Makar of anybody. What are you talking about? There's no what Karev. It's even the fact that we call it Karev. I understand we have to call it Karev to be Makarev. But again, we have to understand it's a whole different world. These people are exactly the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made them. This is part of their journey. And there's a humility there, right? There's a humility there. Yakar Mizoila. But this is the reference that we use terminologically, right? We use this terminology to bring people closer to the service of God, to bring them closer to serving Hashem. Why is that a reference to those who are helping to increase the connection to true avodas Hashem among Jews, whether they're care of Krivim, care of Rechaikim, it's all the same. Why is that called Lahisi Yakar Mizaylal? Because what is Yakar? It's the covet of Hashem. Where is it currently? In Zaylal, in Zilusa de Galusa, right? It's in the impoverishment, the zilus, like Zol is cheap, right? In the cheapness of Galus, and you're able to extract a precious, meaningful existence from within an otherwise purely materialistic and purely cheap, transient way of living. That's Lahiti Yakar Mizaylal. V'zeu, and that's the pausing of the Ram al Goyim Hashem. Haynu k'shak covered moed and mishabchen le azay al shemayim kavayidai. When the Goyim Ram al Goyim Hashem, when all the nations accept upon themselves HaKadosh Baruch Hu's sovereignty, Haynu k'shak aku moed and mishabchen le. Which sefer speaks about this? Which? Well, it's incredible. And again, put it, like I said in Torah in the historical context of the way that he was living and how the Goyim were and how they treated the Jews, that there should be someone with so much compassion that they should also be part of it. The Sfarim just totally ignored, largely, all the psukim that there's, because they couldn't imagine that even these non-Jews, like maybe some other futuristic, like AI augmented non-Jews who are going to treat us very nicely, like what? No, said the Rebbe, no. When the Akum are moedin mishavchen le, azay ala shemayim kvaydai. This is the essence of the kavod of Shemayim. It's so radically beautiful. As in Allah covered me'achoshech, then a Kadosh Baruch Hu's covered is going to lift up. Remember what we learned in the beginning of Torah, that we need to say b'shvili nivra olam, right? That we are not here for the world. The world is not here for us. Right? We are here for the world. Right? Ask not like what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your. Ask what you can do for your Elokim, right? For HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That the whole purpose of us being here in the first place is not that the Goyim should serve us, but that we should service them. That's the point. And the Asad Lava, there's going to be an apprenticeship, right? And the Psukim describe that all the Goyim will come and they're going to grab onto the coat of a Jew and they're going to say, please teach me something. And in that sense, it'll be a Rebbe-Talmud relationship, and the Talmidim will be Mishamish the Rav, but not like serving, not like a servant. The Bechina of Shimush Chachamim, the Bechina of that we're going to be the Kohanim of the world, and the Goyim will be the Bechina of Leviim and Yisraelim, and so on, in that relative framework. That's the Iker. Azaynis Allah covered me'achoshech v'yavshar lav le'Cyrus hatshuva hein l'risha Yisrael hein l'geir. But it's impossible to come to an awakening for tshuva, whether it relates to risha Yisrael, and this word Russia needs a lot of needs a lot of healing, because Russia doesn't mean wicked. There's a terminology in the Gemara in Baba Metzia. I want to say Tav Ayin Gimmul, but I could be completely wrong, so I don't want to say right now. There's Gemara Baba Metzia, it's all sugi over there, that relates to something called Rishei Zaysim. I'll get into it now. Rishei Zaysim, right? So what does Rishei Zaysim mean? What are Zaysim? Zaytim? Olives, right? So Rishei Zaysim, you would translate as wicked olives, right? So what's a wicked olive, right? So if you look at the Mefarshim over there, it explains that what our Rishei Zaysim are is olives that are not going to reach maturity. They're not going to reach their potential. This is called Russia. This word wicked is made up. You think like wicked, you think evil. You think of a witch. You think of something terrible and bad. It's not what Russia means. Russia just means that at this moment, if the person continues on this trajectory, nebuch, they're not going to ever meet their soul. They're not going to be able to reveal their potential. This is a Russia, right? So we have to completely change our definitions, right? This is true across the board, which is part of the book that I'm writing now, which I mentioned here in the SHIURIM. The second half, by the way, of which is all going to be focused on our role within the Umas Ha'olam, and how we need. The first part is all on Chasidus and Hisbodinus, and the second part is how that's supposed to wake us up and activate us to our mission when we think in a bigger sense about why we're actually on this planet, and we think about Galas Hashchina, and we think in the way the Jews were supposed to think from the standpoint of really having a mission in this world. The whole second part is going to be on this Nikuda. But part of the first part is I go through, just as a team, a little bit of a taster, like 18 redefinitions of Jewish concepts, right? And it's just the thing, and how we can completely redefine it as holistic theology, from tshuva to tefillah, to Shabbos, to Yom Tovim, to cheshbon nefesh, etc., how to redefine these, because the terminologies are fine, but it's our definitions that are so irrelevant and that are so fortifying of such an unhealthy perspective. It really is unhealthy, and it leads to terrible perspectives, both that people have on themselves, chas v'shalom, that people have on others, and we need redefining. So I just did a little redefinition for you, and it feels good and it's beautiful, right? The Russia is not a Russia. Nebuch. A person's not fulfilling their potential. So Hein L'Risha Yisrael, whether it's Jews who aren't fulfilling their potential, and that was going to be our working definition for now. Hein L'Gerim, whether it's the Gerim, right? The only way to bring them back is El Yedei Torah, Shemeir Lahem Es Makom Shem Sham, which is going to be able to illuminate their place. And this is, of course, true on an actual practical level. Got to teach. Got to get out there and teach. Find a way to teach. Find a way to spread this with as many people as you possibly can. That's why we're in this world. We're Kohanim. We're teachers. You have to reach them. So that's on a practical level. But what's on the metaphysical level? What's the inner dimension of how it's possible for Torah to be able to reach these people who are the Bechina of Chutz? Because we know that the Torah has 600,000 letters, which of course it doesn't actually. It has about half that amount, but many different understandings as to how to get to that amount. Not getting into that. Keneged Shisha Riba Neshamas. These are Keneged, the 600,000 root souls of the Jewish nation. And each of those 600,000 root souls are rooted, as they are root souls, they're rooted in the mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki Yisrael ala b'machshava tchila, because Am Yisrael arose first in the divine mind, in the Bechina of Chachma. V'al yedei zivug hanafashis nivraim nishmas gerim. And when these neshamas, what's that? What did I say? Sorry? Thank you. That through the zivug of these neshamas in the machshav of Kuchabrichu, from the interconnectivity and the interaction and the coupling, which is difficult for us to imagine what this actually means, but somehow in the realm of the Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when these 600,000 root souls of Klal Yisrael are originated, there are yichudim that are happening among them, and out of these yichudim are birthed the souls of Gerim, that aren't from the original 613, but they're definitely shaykh. They are the product of Klal Yisrael's zivugim. When a Jew is learning Torah and his mitzi is allowing the words of the Torah to emerge from their mouths, and the different letters come into contact one with the other to form a word, and the different words come into contact with each other to form a sentence, and the different sentences contact each other to create paragraphs, right? When that happens, these are all yichudim. You understand that speech is yichudim. Right? To say a word means that I strung together a whole bunch of different sounds, and it emerges as a singular word. It gives birth, right? My dear friend David Weinberg has a beautiful book called "Birth of the Spoken Word." Right? Birth. It's mamash a birth. It gives birth to words. Are a bechina of speech, a bechina of birth. Zeh bechina zivug. Right? They're all receiving illumination one from the other. As Chazal tell us, he doesn't bring the source here, but Chazal tell us that Divrei Torah are dal b'makam zeh and asher b'makam acher, right? And so you have to learn a sugya back and forth. We're going to be learning about Hashem around Shabbos afternoon, a big Shabbos HaGadol drasha, a little bit longer than usual. We're going to be going through the sugya in both Nigla and Nister of Bittul and Bedikas Chametz, right? And so the whole sugya, as you're going to see, of Bedika and Bittul is scattered throughout the first parak. There's no one sugya, right? It's a bunch of different sugyas throughout the first parak of Pesachim, and in other places, by the way, and in other places in Shas, especially as it relates. We're going to learn, there's Bittul's mitam hefker, other reasons, and you can find Gemaras all over the place, right? This is how Gemara is. Each part is misnoitzates, is illuminating different aspects, right? And so that's a bechina of zivug, when you bring together a bunch of different sources from all over the place, and it forms a unified whole. Out of these zivugim is born neshamas. This is where the souls of the gerim come from. Gama Poish Yisrael, and even those who are quote unquote Jewish, Poishim, Jewish sinners, all the while that the name Yisrael is still on them, that they didn't apostate, right? Nikra Poish Yisrael, at the end of the day, they're still called Poish Yisrael, they're still Jewish sinners, right? And we're clear to refer to them by their Jewish identity, right? That the name Yisrael is still upon that person. Right? The Gemara tells us, right, that they're always called Yisrael. Even if they sin, they're called Yisrael. So it makes no difference. He's still bound up with the machshav al yaina. So both the neshamas of Gerim are misnotzates through our liman Torah, because that awakens the hisnoitzitzos of the yichudim, of the neshamas of Klal Yisrael within the Chachma Ilah. And it can also awaken just our liman Torah. It's an unbelievable thing. Just our learning, hopefully with this consciousness, can awaken the souls of those who are so distant, who are part of the Jewish nation, whose maybe their eyes wasn't shining, but you learned their eyes in the Torah, and that was able to awaken them. So it could be that all the millions and millions and millions of dollars that are going to Kirov would maybe be better if we shut down the whole thing. I don't know this. I'm just saying that if, according to this, and put it back into Liman Torah, because who knows what's more effective? Who knows? According to this is the ikr way of being able to reach people. Who knows? We live in such a this worldly mindset that we think that A, leads to B and B leads to C, and that's normally the way that we do it, right? Obviously. But did anybody in Kiruv ever daven for the people that they're trying to be Mekarev? Did they ever stop in the morning and maybe there are other stratagem, other than just giving people a lot of food, and taking them on trips, which is beautiful. Again, I'm not knocking it. I am a little knocking it, but I'm not really knocking it, because I think that it's effective in certain ways, But the question is whether there might be other strategies that are emergent of a more spiritual-minded state, right, where a person recognizes, if I'm trying to do something ruchni, maybe there are ruchniistic strategies as well, that can be just as effective, if not more than effective. This is the strategy. Through the liman Torah, with this consciousness of Torah's chesed, that I want, not that, and here again, we're saying metaphysically. Before we said practically, a person learns in order to teach. Beautifully, FMO, they got to teach. It's very important. But over here we're talking about learning, that the learning itself should be a chesed. That the learning is in and of itself causing the hisnoitzitzos, causing the sparkling of souls in the machshava ilah, which are the bechina of Yisrael ala b'machshava tchila, which are the 600,000 root letters of the Torah, and in so doing, already you could be having an impact on some Jew in Montana. That's always where everybody talks about the Jews in Montana for some reason. All the Edim Zayimim are in Chicago, this, and all the, and at least in America, that's what they say. Do they say that here? If you're learning Makkahs, right? We were in Chicago. We couldn't have been there. We were in Chicago. All the Edim Zayimim. I don't know why. It's a universal thing. They're all in Chicago. And so all the secular Jews are in Montana, right? So it was some Jew in Montana somewhere is gonna wake up. Magia Yisrael misharish neshmasai, and all of a sudden, some kind of flickering of the source of this Jew's soul is going to awaken within them randomly on some random Tuesday, because one Jew somewhere else was learning mamash with b'dechil rechimu, with love and awe and with dvekos, their ice in the Torah. We have no idea where that is or what that is, but that could be umagia ha'ara. And it can reach this Jew, and this itself can cause it to be chazer b'tshuva. It's an amazing thing. The question is, do we believe this? Most of us don't, right? And then with our not believing this, we try to be mekarev people. To what? We ourselves don't have emunah shlema. We should be mekarev. That's I keep on saying. Maybe we are the rechaikim, So who's to say? But we have to believe this. If we mamish believed this, then it would be less dramatic from the standpoint of like, we gotta act quick. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is acting. We do our shtadlus, but we have to be open to all the different strategies from the standpoint of emunah, to believe that tefillah works, to believe that conscious liman Torah works, to believe that saying the truth works, to believe that not trying to water down things works. And that's really crucially important. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us. We're going to finish for today. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us that we should be people that think about the world, care about the world, understand how beautiful it's going to be one day when the covet of Am Yisrael is elevated. Harim Karen Yisrael Amecha, when Am Yisrael's Karen, our pride, our chen is lifted up, and all the Umas HaOlam come and join us, L'avdei Shechem Echad, and that all of humanity can get together in a way, L'hamshich Shalom Olam, there should be peace in the world, when the covet of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is elevated up to its source in Yira, which is only possible through conscious Limud Torah, the Kashir Futza Manasecha HaChutza. Ashreinu Matay Chalkeinu.
אני הווה ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני